As you see on the screen, we're continuing with part 3, the conclusion of the historic love letter between Rukmini and Krishna. Some of you may need a reminder because it was a week ago that we were together on this, 2 weeks ago we were on this topic. The very first queen that Krishna married was Rukmini. Krishna left Mathura very abruptly with Balaram because it was time to marry Rukmini, and he knew it. Of course, Krishna is omniscient. He knows everything. And he knows that Rukmini is not different than Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, his eternal consort. Therefore, we must understand that this is simply a lila, or a pastime. As sometimes happens in pastimes, there's something very desirable and there's some difficult obstacle. And the creation of an obstacle makes the pastime even more enjoyable for Krishna. So Krishna went to Dwarka. His method of getting to Dwarka was very interesting. He and Balaram jumped from the top of a very, very tall mountain. Celestial chariots just appeared and whisked them away to Dwarka in a flash of time. In the first part, we heard how Balaram married Revati. And we then also heard the situation of Rukmini and her 5 elder brothers. Rukmini's father was named Bhishmaka, and he was a king of a very large kingdom that was not so far from Dwarka. And Rukmini was of marriageable age. She was hearing from different sadhus like Narada Muni about Krishna, and she decided that she wanted to give her heart to Krishna. Rukmini's father was very pleased with that idea. And so were the citizens, except for her elder brother. In Vedic culture, the elder brother serves as almost like the father. Her eldest brother was named Rukmi. And Rukmi was very, extremely envious of Krishna, and he was a good friend of Shishupal. And as we know, Shishupal was likewise very envious of Krishna. So when it was understood that Rukmini wanted to marry Krishna, Rukmi stood up and insisted that his younger sister marry Shishupal instead. The father wanted to keep peace in the family, and so he didn't stop Shishupal from making marriage arrangement for Rukmini with this awful person, Shishupal. Kings from all over the countryside, the whole land was invited to attend the wonderful wedding of Rukmini and Shishupal, and no way was she going to marry Shishupal. She would rather die. The, the evening before the ceremonial activities were to begin, Rukmini sat down and wrote this amazing letter. We heard the details of that letter already twice. She sent a very confidential and efficient Brahmana to Dwaraka to inform Krishna of the situation and to read her written letter. Krishna received the Brahmana with all due respect. Between a Kshatriya and a Brahmana, Krishna played that role. And after explaining and reading the letter, Krishna was very happy. He even said, I have also heard about Rukmini, and sometimes at nights I cannot even sleep thinking of her. Now, in mundane terms, it sounds like a mundane romance. She loves him, he loves her, woo, woo, woo. So it's not like that. These are transcendental emotions that Krishna enjoys and Rukmini enjoys, and are appreciating of their pure standard of love for one another gives of an idea of how the reflection comes about in this world. Krishna told the Brahmin, her desire will be fulfilled. I will destroy those enemies, including Rukmini, who is envious of me, and soon we will be married. The Brahmana returned very quickly in the early morning hours of the next day. Rukmini was informed by the Brahmana that Krishna has agreed to marry you. In fact, he has already entered into the city just this morning. And that's where we ended part 2. So now we're going to go to part 3. The slide is not moving. Hang on a minute. The slide is not moving. Okay, that was just some nice graphics. Here's the beginning of our presentation. When devotees' determination meets Krishna's determination. Rukmini was determined to marry Krishna only, and Krishna was equally determined to marry her. Please read. Next. So please appreciate there's two things. There's the devotee and there's Krishna. If you or I become determined to be in our relationship with Krishna, his determination will match our determination. Meanwhile, Balaram becomes involved. Please read. The name of the kingdom where Rukmini lives has different names, but Kundina is one of those names. Let's focus on Balaram for a moment. We know that Balaram is not different than Krishna other than his complexion is whitish like milk. Like Krishna, Balaram is omniscient. He is all-knowing. So how is it that Balaram is having some fear that Krishna might have a big fight. Balaram already experienced 17 times. Just he and Krishna alone defeated the entire army of Jarasandha. So why is he worried? He is omniscient. No one can defeat Krishna. It's not possible. Our acharyas explain this again and again in different situations. Krishna has many potencies, one of which is Yogamaya. By Krishna's Yogamaya potency, he arranged that Balaram would be forgetful of his all-knowing nature. And the purpose was to add strength to his brotherly affection, thinking, I have to protect my younger brother, Krishna. To protect Krishna, who doesn't need protection, he brought huge army from Dwarka. This is part of the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes. That is, even Balaram experiences all varieties of loving emotion, including forgetfulness and fear. It's not a fear or forgetfulness like we have. It's a loving ecstasy. The very next morning, after Krishna arrived, we see Rukmini and her friends going to the family deity temple outside the city. The family deity was one by the name Girija, which is one of the names of Durga. Please read. There we see Rukmini in the very front. Directly behind her are all of her close friends. Behind them are the wives of the Brahmanas. And there were bodyguards. As Rukmini was making her way to the temple, along with Balaram, Krishna entered into the main gates of the city where Rukmini resided. If you look in the lower center, there you'll see Balaram. Here's Balaram, and here's Krishna, and all the citizens are so happy seeing Krishna has come. And they had love for Krishna also. So much love that they were hoping and praying that he would capture Rukmini and take her away. Now, we discussed this the other time we were together about the 7 different types of marriage. One of them is this kidnapping type of marriage. Somebody said in China, if a girl is to marry another man and somebody else comes in and steals her away, that's not nice. And, why did Krishna do this bad thing? For ordinary people, it would be a very bad thing to do. But for Kshatriyas, it was a very noble and honorable thing to do for a husband and wife to marry in this way. And all the citizens knew that that was an honorable and noble thing to do, so they wanted Krishna to steal Rukmini, and he did. So they prayed to Lord Narayana in this way. Read. Now, they didn't see Krishna as Narayana. They were praying to Narayana, wanting that Krishna would marry her. Now, if you were Rukmini, what would you be feeling at this time? When she wrote the letter, she was fearless and very bold. She allowed that Krishna may say no. But she was determined that if he said no, then for as many lifetimes as it took, she would maintain her position of aspiring to have Krishna as her husband. And she knows that Krishna is very powerful. But so is her brother and all the other kings assembled to ensure that Krishna wouldn't do this. So there was some anxiety. Please read. Next. As a young princess, she was kept indoors where lusty eyes could not see her beauty, but when they saw her beauty, they nearly fainted. right in the midst of this whole scene, Krishna draws his chariot right before Rukmini and places her on the chariot, and off he goes. Read. He didn't even speed away. He just went very slowly, very calmly, taking away Rukmini right before everybody's eyes. Here's a painting that shows the temple with the deity inside. Krishna is helping Rukmini get on his chariot. In the background on the left, that's her dear friends. And over here are some kings watching what's going on. Another nice painting of this celebrated event, Krishna taking Rukmini away. And in the background is the temple. And here's another one. Krishna's helping Rukmini get on the chariot, and off they go. Read. Now notice in the background there's some elephant and persons riding on the elephants and soldiers that are just astonished at how bold is Krishna taking Rukmini this way. On the far left, this is Rukmini's friends helping her. Now here's the same painting close up. And here's some of the soldiers watching what Krishna's doing. Oh, so many powerful generals watching this happen. They're astonished. How bold is Krishna? Please read. Next. Now, those of you that were with us from the first class, or part 1, will remember that Jarasandha was defeated 17 times over the course of maybe 17 years, defeated completely by Krishna and Balaram. But he's calling Krishna a jackal. and likening themselves to lions and Krishna to a jackal. Now, this is a type of pride. In addition to pride, he is very envious of Krishna like the other kings. And from pride and envy, one is very easily angered. So now is a time to reflect. How does all this happen? What's the root of these feelings? A short answer is forgetfulness of Krishna. The application point is for each one of us, when these negative emotions start to happen, what should we do to get free from those negative emotions? Don't forget Krishna. Always remember Krishna. Here's a nice painting. Krishna's driving away on his chariot. On the left side, we see some men falling off their horses, seeing the beauty of Rukmini. And in the background, there's Rukmini's dear friends. And another similar painting. Now comes a battle scene. Read. Remember, these kings, there were many powerful kings with all of their armies making a big fight. We can see in the background here, there's the soldiers coming after Krishna. And Krishna looks pretty calm. If you look closely at the painting, you'll see arrows flying through the air toward Krishna. Now, Rukmini knows that Krishna is very wonderful, but she doesn't really know how powerful he is. So there was some fear showing in her eyes. So what did Krishna say? Please read. Now he's speaking of the soldiers as her soldiers. They're soldiers from Dwaraka, but she's going to be married to the prince of Dwaraka, so they're her soldiers. Now over here you see the temple. There's the deity. And if you look closely, you'll see this particular soldier is white, like milk. That's Balaram. And the next painting shows Balaram having big battle. He likes battle with the chasing, pursuing other kings. In his left hand, he has his plow. And in his right hand, he has the instrument that's used for plowing the fields. So I leave it to your imagination who won the battle. Read. I did some research to find what kind of arrows are Naracha arrows, but I couldn't find an answer. There's special weapons. The kings weren't killed, but they were stopped, so they went back to the palace. And they tried to console Shishupal, who just lost his wife. There was one person, however, who was especially envious and especially frustrated, and that was Rukmini's elder brother. There we see him with his sword in his right hand. Just watching as Krishna is taking Rukmini away. Please read. The Rakshasa style marriage means he was abducting or kidnapping her in this very chivalrous way. Here's another painting. On the right side, it shows Rukmi with his sword and shield coming after Krishna. And Krishna uses arrows to smash his sword and his shield. Please read. Now comes some very tender moments in this chivalrous battle. On behalf of her brother, Rukmini pleads that Krishna not slay him. Now please remember from part 2, Rukmi had no concern at all for his sister. He knew that she wanted to marry Krishna and he stood in the way. And not only he stood in the way, but he insisted that she marry somebody who she would never, ever, ever marry because he was a bad person. He completely misused his power as the elder brother, cultural power, to have his young sister do what she didn't want to do for the rest of her life. It was very bad. The tender-hearted Rukmini, nonetheless, is praying for his safety. Those of you that know the first canto Bhagavatam know that Draupadi made a similar appeal to Arjun. Someone who is an aggressor to Draupadi, she pleaded for the well-being and safety of that aggressor. That person was Ashvatthama. If you're not familiar with that story, you can read Canto 1, Chapter 7. It's very clearly explained. Please read. Now, how sharp was Krishna's sword? It was sharp like a razor. In the background, you can see Krishna's chariot. And in Vedic culture, when something is done like this, it's total humiliation. It's even worse than death. And it's such a celebrated event. There's several paintings. Here we see Krishna in his chariot with Rukmini, and in the center of the painting is Rukmi with his half-shaven head. And now Balaram comes into the picture again. Please read. Each devotee, including Balaram, has certain things that devotee likes to do. One of the services that Balaram likes is being a mediator. Sometimes one party has a dispute with another party and they're very hot and angry with one another. And a mediator likes to stand in the middle and cool both parties down. So Balaram liked that. So he speaks in a certain way to his younger brother Krishna. Then in turn, he speaks in a certain way to Rukmini so that everything is made nice. Elder brothers can sometimes do that, speak respectfully, but sometimes strongly to the younger brother. Here's what Balaram said. Please read. Next. Krishna speaks like this in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, "For one who has once been honored, dishonor is worse than death." And here Balaram is saying something very similar. Next. They're not married yet, but he's speaking like that and cooling Krishna down, who was going to kill him, and now he's just humiliated him. By Balaram speaking that way to Krishna, his one intention is to have Rukmini feel that Balaram is taking her side. But let us remember that Balaram is the original spiritual master. So Balaram gives a Bhagavad Gita class to Rukmini. Here's what he says to her. Read. Sounds like chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita. Then? He goes on to teach to Rukmini the difference between reality and illusion. What does he say about reality? Please read. In order to understand something transcendental, it is almost necessary to be poetic, to use metaphor and simile. Something unknown is hinted at by comparing it to something known. When one is in Maya, one is lost contact with the soul. So the soul is here being compared to the sun. And the sense of sight is not separate from the sun or what is seen by sight. And the soul, similarly, is very, very different from matter that it is illuminating or animating. The soul never mixes with matter. And it's compared to the sun. As the sun is not separate from the sense of sight or what is seen. After explaining what is reality, he's now going to explain what is illusion. The example is like that of a fish. A fish cannot survive out of water. Even if it dreams of some kind of happiness by catching that nice butterfly out of the water, he can't stay there. Similarly, people are pursuing a happiness that is outside of the realm of the soul, and there's no happiness there. Please read. He's requesting Rukmini to let go of her bodily conception of life. This is my brother, and he's a family member, and all of those things. That's how it applies to Rukmini. How does it apply to us? Read. We all have a conception of who we are and what happiness is, and what are some illusory conceptions that we contend with on a regular basis. And when we find ourselves in that circumstance, what to do? Read. One of the best things is devotee association and hearing and chanting and discussing topics about the soul with those devotees. This is the purpose behind chapter 2 or the whole of Bhagavad Gita. Read. So here's how he concludes his message to Rukmini. Read. And in this way, Krishna and Rukmini have been made peaceful. Rukmi is now set free to go his own way. And Krishna returns to Dwarka, and a nice marriage takes place. Krishna is being honored, as you see. Rukmini offers Krishna the ceremonial garland. And it's a very grand festival, the marriage of the two. And the brahmanas there on the left, they're overseeing the rituals for the marriage. As you see, one of the rituals, they're standing on this little wooden platform. And Krishna has received his garland from Rukmini. He's now about to give a garland to her. And after their marriage, they enter into Dwaraka and live together as husband and wife. Let us remember, Krishna is not the king is Ugrasena. But Krishna is part of the royal family, and he's very much loved by everyone. So the marriage of Krishna and Rukmini is a wonderful event for everybody in Dwarka. And this ends the three-part story of the kidnapping of Princess Rukmini. Please read. Whatever our eternal relationship with Krishna is, we don't know. However, having that become revealed to us is something that requires our determination at this stage of our spiritual life. There has to be a strong yearning that becomes then eagerness, that then becomes a spontaneous hankering, in fact, greed to achieve that relationship with Krishna. The followers of Lord Chaitanya, our great acharyas, have explained what I just said in many, many detailed ways. The determination of Rukmini is a very exemplary quality for us to emulate. Spiritual life is meant for more than just diminishing our suffering and struggle. Our spiritual life is meant to restore, in a wholesome way, our actual relationship, our eternal relation with Krishna. As our spiritual practices mature, that becomes more and more vivid and all important for us. That's the way that real happiness is experienced, and automatically the struggles and tribulations of this world fade. They're still there and you may deal with them, but you go to a higher platform of consciousness by following the example of great personalities like Princess Rukmini. In the upcoming weeks, my contemplation is to continue with Krishna's developing his situation in Dwaraka. Next time we get together, we'll hear about Krishna marrying 5 more queens. There were 8 principal queens, along with 16,100. After marrying Rukmini, we already heard some time ago about the next 2 queens that Krishna married. Jambavati was queen number 2, and Satyabhama was queen number 3. That's all in connection with the Shamantaka jewel story. And then comes 5 more, so 3 plus 5 makes 8. And we will also hear about the 16,100 queens that all were married at once. Just today, I heard Srila Prabhupada narrate a story about the British when they started invading in India and did battle with the Muslim rulers. And the Muslim ruler at the time had something like 584 queens. Prabhupada's point was polygamy was prevalent. Polygamy was widespread. It was part of the culture of the time. Now, kings would do because they had wealth and strength and the capacity to maintain and protect. But Krishna not only married all these queens, but he expanded himself to be with each queen simultaneously. And no mortal can do that. Okay, so that concludes our narration of part 3. And we now have some time if there's some questions or discussion. Well, it's not exactly that Krishna creates the quality, but Krishna sanctions. All living entities are tiny parts and parcels of Krishna. So whatever Krishna has, living entities have in a tiny degree. Krishna has unlimited free will, living entities have tiny free will. So envy arises from misuse of free will. There's no cause such as envy for misuse of free will. Rather, envy arises from misuse of free will. Rajendra's question was, why does Krishna create this quality? He doesn't create the quality. He sanctions it if someone misuses their free will. So just to restate his question a little differently, the purpose behind Krishna sanctioning envy is that Krishna sanctions free will and people can misuse it. Krishna also sanctions proper use of free will. So the free will is in our hand. We can do with it, properly or improperly. Second question. Yes. Is transcendental envy only for pleasing Krishna? The answer is yes. Now, there are two ways to answer this question. One is that answer. There's transcendental envy, it is for the pleasure of Krishna. But transcendental envy does not look like mundane envy. It's like competition. In the material world, there's competition. And in the spiritual world, there's competition. But the competition is who can please Krishna. So one of the gopis makes nice garlands, and other gopis thinks, oh, she's made such nice garlands. Let me see if I can make nicer garlands. But the making of nicer garlands is not to become better than the other, but is to please Krishna. Just like the happiness of Krishna is the greatest when he's with Radharani, and so all the gopis, without envy, they want to bring Radha and Krishna together. Yeah. All the residents of Vrindavan, all the gopis in Vrindavan know that the happiness Krishna feels being with Radharani is superlative, and therefore they're always making arrangements that Krishna and Radha can become together. And they compete with one another how to assist Radha and Krishna coming together. But that's the transcendental happiness. But we have the left-wing gopis and the right-wing gopis, and they have a different mood of how to please Krishna, and so they may compete against one another how to please Krishna better. But it's only in relation to pleasing Krishna. Next. There's a lot to say on that topic. It's not um, Kali Yuga. Divorce and remarriage is a Kali Yuga event. It's possible. I mean, in Kali Yuga, anything is possible. Good and bad is it's all possible. But it's possible. I'm thinking of one situation where a woman was married. The Go ahead. Unknown to anybody, the man was abusive, like harsh and unkind. They did, and she has a very qualified husband to protect her. But not all um, remarriages have a happy ending like that. It's possible. Often it's a dream that doesn't have a happy ending. In part, it doesn't have a happy ending because there's not so many qualified men. And in part, it's not a happy ending because there's not so many qualified women. But these sociology topics can go on and on. Go ahead, next question. Yeah. Right. Sadhu Sangha. I have decided about 3 weeks ago. When anybody asks the how-to question, I'm just going to say Sadhu Sangha. And it's true. When you have Sadhu Sangha, what do you do? You do what sadhus do when you're with Sadhu Sangha. And if you do what sadhus do with sadhus, you're going to get all that determination and faith and all good things. Sadhu Sangha means you serve the sadhu. It doesn't mean you just hang out and spend time. You serve them. And and to serve them includes hearing from them. And the fruit of hearing from them is the heart becomes cleansed. And you start doing what sadhus say because your heart has become cleansed. And then your faith will grow and your determination will grow and you'll be a nice devotee. So, how to is sadhu sangha. It's quite simple. No tricks. There's no secrets that not being told to you. Just like we're doing now. Just like we're doing now. You're hearing about Rukmini's determination. So think of Rukmini, meditate on her qualities, the strength of determination that she had, become a good follower of Rukmini. Or think of Prabhupada and how he had so much opposition and how determined he was. And you hear more and more and more and more of all those details. And you become very determined and very faithful. I'll say the same thing in a different way. In China, it's now an approved literature, the Life of Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada Lilamrita abridged. Read it. When you read it, you'll become inspired. Wow, what a wonderful personality Prabhupada was, how determined and how faithful, and your determination and faith will grow. But I'm saying the same thing in a different way. Next question. Yeah, you do it. You don't just talk about it. You do it. It's application. Application is the way to do it. But Manani, don't take the question and break it down further. I've answered the question. There's no indication like that from our acharyas, but it's a nice question. Hmm. Keep practicing. And sadhu sangha, how to? By practice, by good association and by practice. Good association means you will get strength beyond your own strength. And by practice means whatever are the coverings that are keeping your soul from its healthy and happy and natural state, gradually those coverings will be cleansed. Their devotee means sadhu. Sadhu means devotee. When we say sadhu sangha, it doesn't mean uh, sannyasis or, in the classic sense, an old man with a big long beard, and that's a sadhu. Sadhu means devotee. But Vrishni, right? Vrishni dynasty is what she. Okay. Um, those, it's complicated. That the lineage of kings in which Krishna was born is very complicated, and I can send a chart to Manani Radha, and she can translate it for whoever's asking this question. And there's names all over the place. They're just previous kings with different names. King Yadu, King Vrishni, King this one, King that one. but it's all from the same dynasty. Actually, it won't require translation because it's just names. So I'll send her a few charts of the lineages of the ancestors of Krishna, and you can study the lineage of the ancestors of Krishna and know where who's who and where's where. But keeping it very simple, they have prior ancestors they're all derived from, and then different sons and different sons of those sons, and it's just different dynasties. We have 7 minutes left. Fantastic. And when there are opportunities for physical association, take the opportunity, go take a little vacation somewhere where you know there's nice devotees and spend a little time and come back refreshed. Here's something else you can do. Create some association in the city where you are. It all started like that anyways, right? Think of some city where there is nice, abundant association, and sometime way back in history it was just one person started something. So there's 3 options for you. Virtual association, occasionally take a little vacation and go where there are devotees. And the third option is create devotees where you are. And you will probably find someone who's really sincere, and they may even become more sadhu-like than you.